You are listening to The Briefing, first broadcast on the 18th of April, 2025 on Monocle Radio. Hello and welcome to The Briefing, broadcasting live from Studio One here at Midori House in London. I'm Chris Chermak. Coming up on today's program, it is something of an in-house special on this Good Friday holiday, starting with Monocle's Anita Riotta. Anita, you're here to tell us about Giorgia Meloni, the Trump whisperer.
Yes, this was her first test, I would say, if she really wants to be the bridge between Brussels and DC. So we'll see how she did.
We'll also hear about a newly international airport in Japan from Monocle's Tom Webb. And Fernando Pacheco is also here for a roundup of the news out of Brazil. What have you found, Faye?
Hi, Chris. Today we talk about the green inequality in Brazil and how our love for salted cod is making us poor.
We'll also get the latest installment of our series on the Osaka Expo and explore Dubai's artistic identity. All that right here on The Briefing with me, Chris Chermak. Giorgia Meloni may not be Brussels' preferred representative to negotiate with the United States, but it is a role that Italy's Prime Minister has been leaning into this week. Meloni's tactics during a White House visit yesterday appeared to be a mix of flattery, common ideology, and wrapping Europe's fate in with the United States, with rhetoric that Donald Trump could certainly understand, making the West great again, for example. And joining us now to tell us more is Anita Riotta, Monocle's producer of The Foreign Desk. Anita, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chris.
This was always going to be an interesting meeting. The fact that Meloni is kind of this EU representative won't necessarily go down all that well with Brussels, but Trump clearly has a soft spot for Meloni. How did she use that to her advantage?
I think soft spot is exactly the right word. It's important to remember, I think, to set some sort of context for this meeting, that Meloni was the only European, I think the only world leader invited to Trump's inauguration. She has an excellent relationship with Elon Musk. And I think a lot of this is due to the fact that certainly in Europe, she's the only leader who can speak Trump's language fluently and authentically. She's not sort of trying to pander to him. She is also someone who is from the far right.
This is her language.
This is her language. And so it fits her because this is what she says at home. This is what she says in Brussels. And this is what she says in DC. So I think she's able to just relate to him in a way that other Europeans simply can't do.
And she is the kind of leader, given that Donald Trump wants. He would like to have more Melonis in Europe. But at the same time, it was interesting that she is representing Europe's interests. She hasn't been a fan of the tariffs, for example. And so what did you make of the kind of common approach that the two took there? Donald Trump took a very different tone on that, suddenly saying, 100% we're going to reach a deal with Europe. He's been so against Europe throughout these conversations. Do we buy that confidence suddenly that a deal is going to be reached?
I mean, it's exceptionally difficult to say. I was surprised by his tone in the meeting. I did think it would be friendly and that Giorgia Meloni, whatever you think of her actual politics, she is a smooth operator. I had no doubt really that she would be able to go in there and play the dynamic. But I was surprised at Trump's tone, that he, like you said, oh, we're 100% going to reach a deal now. Giorgia Meloni doesn't actually have any power to negotiate a deal for the EU. That is Ursula von der Leyen's remit. But she is able to, maybe placate him a little bit or smooth things over. What I did think was interesting is that Italy has a gigantic trade surplus with the U.S., which is exactly, Trump's sticking point. Americans buy far more Italian goods than Italians buy from the U.S. So
and yet somehow that wasn't a problem.
And somehow that wasn't a problem. Another thing is that Giorgia Meloni has always been pro-Ukraine, has always been pro-Europe having a pivotal role in finding a peace negotiation. And she somehow is able to sidestep these slight sticking points and more focus in on what they do share in common.
Well, and speaking of what they share in common, she did very much focus in on that as well, which was part of these tactics you might describe, I suppose, given her ability to be this smooth talker. She sort of railed against the woke agenda, spoke about curbing immigration, which does make one question how Brussels and other European leaders are going to be feeling about that. Will they be looking at this meeting and saying, the fact that, this is our representative, it's not always easy.
I do wonder what that dynamic is like amongst European leaders right now, because on the one hand, having someone like Giorgia Meloni who can go, and at the end of the day, she is advocating for your interests. She is advocating for a trade deal. She is advocating for the U.S. not to remove itself from defending Ukraine and finding a peace deal there. So is it I mean, I would not be upset about the fact that we have a representative who he has positive feelings towards, and he's, an emotional leader in that way. If he likes you, it goes better. If he doesn't like you, it goes worse. So I do think that is a benefit for the EU. But of course, at the same time, I don't know how Macron or Ursula von der Leyen feel about leaning into make the West great again. And she said something along the lines of, we need to lean into Western nationalism. I don't know how the Germans and the French feel about that. That's for sure.
Well, and you said before that Giorgia Meloni herself doesn't really have the power to negotiate a trade deal. And yet she is inviting Donald Trump to come to Rome. He has accepted that invitation. So she's taking this interesting lead as being the one who will bring Trump to Europe. And then she's inviting European leaders like the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen to come and meet Trump on her turf. How is that going to go?
I do think she's playing her hand for now. Again, it's early days, but she's playing her hand really well. J.D. Vance, the vice president, is in Rome right now. The U.S.-Iran nuclear talks are happening in Rome over the weekend. So she definitely is looking to place herself at the center of the transatlantic relationship. Now, if that works out in Europe's benefit, that's all to be seen. But I do think there will have to be a sort of new power dynamic on the continent, that Italy hasn't had this central role in a long time, maybe if ever. So it does. I will be curious to see how the personalities with the new German chancellor coming in, with Emmanuel Macron, who doesn't shy away from the spotlight, how, these more traditional European powers are going to deal with the fact that she is the power broker right now.
Yes, Michael might be a little jealous of that visit to Rome. Thanks very much, Anita. That was Anita Riota, Monocle's producer of The Foreign Desk. And now here's Laura Kramer with the day's other news headlines.
Thanks, Chris. The U.S. says it may leave peace talks with Ukraine if there's no progress in the coming days. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says Washington wants a deal that gives U.S. companies access to Ukrainian minerals in return for security support. China's foreign minister says Western nations are damaging global stability. Wang Yi told leaders from the global south that unilateral actions like U.S. tariffs are hurting the world order. And more than 11,000 flights are set to leave UK airports this Easter weekend. Dublin and Amsterdam are the most popular destinations, with planes taking off around every 30 seconds. Those are the day's headlines. Back to you, Chris.
Thanks very much, Laura. And now it is time for a look at stories making the headlines in Asia today. And joining us for that here in the studio is Tom Webb, Monocle's deputy head of radio, one of those people who has not escaped on one of those UK flights we heard leaving for Amsterdam or Dublin. How are you doing, Tom?
I'm very happy to be here. We've just been given Easter eggs. I selected a Malteser one. What did you go for?
I went for a Cadbury's cream egg, being very sort of the American in the UK, I suppose. I just had to go for the UK thing.
It's been very odd watching my international colleagues eat a Cadbury's cream egg. What did you go? You bit the top off and ate the middle out.
Well, I did for the previous small ones. Now I have a giant Cadbury's cream egg. I'm not actually sure how to handle that. I'm going to need some advice later. I don't know if there's like cream in the middle when it's like the big one. I don't know how that works.
No.
Well, we do have some actual stories to discuss, Tom, and we are going to start with airports, not the Easter airports here in the UK, but in Japan, Kobe Airport. It's becoming an international airport. It has an international terminal now.
It is, and it's about time, and it opened today. They built it many weeks ago. Kobe is very interesting because Japan has had a huge influx of tourists, yet it's part of the country that still hasn't bounced back to pre-pandemic levels. It's still around 80%. So they're trying to attract more international tourists, and they're going to do so because they now fly direct to 5 cities across China, South Korea and Taiwan. And these are cities like Seoul, Shanghai, Nanjing, Taipei, Taichung. 40 trips per week, flights going every single day except to Taipei, which is 5 a week. And they're expecting 300,000 travellers off the back of this, which is going to bring 10 billion yen, which is around $70 million to the region. And it will open up very important tourist destinations like the beautiful Arima Onsen, as well as Kobe's Chinatown, which many Chinese tourists can now fly direct to.
And will it sort of spread the wealth, do you think? Because Japan has had this issue of over-tourism, or at least we've had a few people on this show in the past who talk about the fact that for another country, it wouldn't really be over-tourism, but Japan itself struggles at this point to deal with the number of tourists it's been getting.
Yeah, they are now promoting many different Kobe international destinations. Taxi drivers, hotels, new openings are all going to come off the back of this. So it is an important moment.
Well, let's move on to one other story, which is very much in my remit, Tom, because I don't know if you know that I'm a huge baseball fan over in the United States. And we want to talk about baseball in South Korea, the KBO. What's been happening there?
This is the KBO. KBO means keep buggering on in the UK, Churchill's quote. This means Korean Baseball Organization. Huge sport in South Korea.
Huge in South Korea, absolutely.
Now, what is it about the US baseball that you love so much?
I love the style of it. I usually describe it for people, which I think will go to this story that baseball compared to other sports, it takes a long time, but what it means is that you have time to just sit, enjoy, chat with friends, and have some food.
And that is exactly why more and more American travellers and Taiwanese travellers are going to South Korea just for the baseball experience. And it is a very culinary one, as you mentioned. You can get the finest foods in all of South Korea in one place. Straight to your seat. Pork belly, chilled raw fish, chicken, pizza, and the most popular fried shrimp. And because of the way that that baseball games have very frequent breaks, you can go off and try many, many different flavours. And also, something that's very popular is locking arms with a stranger and dancing and chanting together for 3 hours. So the line here is that Korea Tourism Organization have launched a travel package so that you can go just for the purpose of your KBO experience.
Amazing. I might be on the next flight over, Tom. That sounds fantastic. The fried shrimp. Sign me up. We have a few more stories to go through. Seaweed surprise rolls at Jeju's The Beach.
There has been a seaweed surprise story. Now, it doesn't sound worth noting, but it is, because Iho Beach, which is like the beach of Barcelona, it's a very important beach for the city, it is completely swamped in seaweed. It's not uncommon, but this is uncommon because it's 20 tons worth. And it's come at a time where bank holidays are approaching in May, and it's decomposing, and the stink is unbearable. Now, seaweed is a very important part of South Koreans' export. It's grown 16% year on year. It's worth $500 million a year. This cannot be exported. In fact, it's been picked up by hand and dumped because it is so rotten and so vile for the poor residents.
It is so awful. I've seen this once in California at the beaches too. It's just crazy when seaweed rocks up and just completely takes over a beach. But one other story before we let you go, Tom, because we are going to be talking about the Osaka Expo. We have a little report coming up shortly. There's been some news from the Osaka Expo, an arrest. Tell us about this.
Yeah, so the Osaka Expo has been riddled with issues, which are queues and delays, bad organisation. However, it hasn't made any arrests until now. An octogenarian has been arrested for stealing honey. Now, the next story, we're going off to Oman, but this is from the Kyrgyzstan pavilion, where their honey is worth $50. And an old man...
That's some good honey.
It's a very, very good honey. It's very famous, which is why they're promoting it. An old man just popped it in his bag and has now been arrested. It's the Commons A Pavilion. 29 countries are jointly exhibited there, so there must have been some confusion that he got away with it.
But he didn't get away with it.
But he didn't get away with it.
Who found him? Who tracked him down? I do wonder what the security is like. I guess. I mean, this is a big event, so they must be watching people. It's not just like a shopping mall that you can wander in and out of.
I'll follow this story for you, Chris, and keep you posted.
I do look forward to that. Tom Webb, Monocle's Deputy Head of Radio. Thank you very much for joining us. You're listening to The Briefing on Monocle Radio. You are back with The Briefing. I'm Chris Chermak. The Osaka Expo in Japan opened on Sunday and as part of our continuing series showcasing the event. Today we are exploring the Pavilion of Oman. Monocle's Ryuma Takahashi and our Tokyo Bureau Chief Fiona Wilson tell us more.
The Oman Pavilion, themed Earth, Water and Humanity, is located in what is ambitiously known as the Saving Lives zone of the Expo. As you approach this pavilion, you'll notice its distinctive red architecture stands in contrast to the more subdued colours of surrounding pavilions. The architectural design draws inspiration from Oman's diverse topography, evoking the gentle slopes of the desert mountains. The bold red and white structure, complemented by planted green gardens, subtly reflects the colours of Oman's national flag. Upon entering the pavilion, you'll find Arabic and Japanese proverbs and poems about water and people on display, a nod to the pavilion's theme. Step into the garden and you'll find flowing water and greenery. You can take a break here while enjoying an Omani coffee. In the evening, this garden becomes a stage for Omani music and dance performances. Inside the building, media installations tell the story of how water creates and nurtures life. The Oman Pavilion offers a sensory experience of how the Omani people have interacted with water and land throughout their history, but also reveals intersections with distant Japan's culture and spirituality through the universal theme of water.
Monocle's Tokyo Bureau Chief Fiona Wilson and Ryuma Takahashi, thank you very much for that report from the Osaka Expo. You're listening to The Briefing on Monocle Radio. It is time now for a roundup of what's making the headlines in Brazil with Fernando Augusto Pacheco, Monocle's senior correspondent. Fernando, it is a Friday. You are not here for the Global Countdown. We just did that yesterday. I'm sorry I missed that, by the way.
You missed a very good rundown.
It was a rocking Chile Global Countdown. We have we're going to start with some slightly more serious stories. You have something about a census about the leafiest cities in Brazil.
Yes, and the headline was The Green Inequality, a story from O Globo. And it's quite interesting, Chris, because surprisingly, perhaps for some, the cities in the region close to the Amazon forest, they are the least leafiest, actually, in a way. So, and there's a lot of reasons for that. First of all, there's bad planning, because those cities, they grew too fast in the 70s. They were not very populated at the time. But for example, a city like Manaus, I've shown you in the picture, right? Where
it is an incredible picture when you look at Manaus, because it's right next to the forest, right next to the Amazon, and yet you have this line from the forest, as it were, to the city, which has no green whatsoever.
And another city that everybody's paying attention this year is Belém, which is also in the north region of the country, and is going to be hosting COP30 later this year. But interestingly enough, again, it's not very leafy. It's a very urban city. They have a lot of kind of problems. But looking on the other side, the leafiest cities, funnily enough, they are in the center west, which is quite wealthy because of the agribusiness. In a way, people talk about deforestation of Brazil. They think of that area. But the cities itself, there are a lot of trees, there are a lot of parks, because there's a lot of investment. And it is a region of the country that is booming. So there is a correlation for sure. I think in many other countries as well about wealth and being leafy or not as well.
Wealth and simply investing in your green spaces.
Absolutely. And even me from São Paulo is definitely not the worst, or Rio de Janeiro, but we are having some issues with that as well. And I would even advise people to buy the current Monocle Auto. I had an interview with a Brazilian landscape designer, and we spoke about that. She's saying that the new laws in the city of São Paulo is going to make it a bit harder, and it's going to make the city less green as well. So we're having a lot of debates about that in the country.
Well, let's move on to another story about Brazil going abroad. It is the year of Brazil in France.
Yes, very much so. So it's a story from UOL, one of the most important websites in Brazil. So President Macron and Lula, they've announced a few years ago that this is going to be a very special year for both countries. So it is the year of Brazil in France. And what does it mean? It means so many things. It means a carnival parade at the Champs-Élysées, which is happening later this year. Lots of Brazilian musicians going to France, including Seu Jorge, which we play here on Monocle Radio. And I have to tell you something, Chris. I do think the French they have a deep admiration towards Brazilian culture. Every time I go there is a Brazilian film out in the screens. There's a big section of bossa nova in the city shops. So there is something going on. And my favorite painter, I was in Paris in January. The exhibition, unfortunately, is not on at the moment. But there was a whole exhibition about Tarsila do Amaral. So it's a beautiful connection there.
What is it about Brazil going to France, Faye? I'm going to put you on the spot here. Like, what does Brazil bring that France does not have?
Maybe a little bit of the va-va-voom. And I think the French, they have good taste, they generally do. And I think they look at Brazil, they think maybe they want a little bit of that sunny image. So there is a good connection.
They do bring the sunshine.
And to be fair, vice versa as well. Rio in the 60s, the bossa nova and everything. There was a little bit of influence from France as well, on the other hand. I think Rio wanted to be the Paris of Latin America. So in a way, I think both countries admire each other as well. And of course, I should mention Cannes. We do have a Brazilian film at Cannes. I think we are kind of the country of honor this year in Cannes. But The Secret Agent, which is about a teacher during the military dictatorship, there's a lot of turmoil happening there. I cannot wait to see the film.
Brazil brings the va-va-voom to France. You heard it here first.
So I think I'm the only person in the world that still says the word va-va-voom in a non-ironic way. I'll keep saying.
Keep saying it. Keep saying it. Va-va-voom is back, Faye. Va-va-voom is back.
Oh, yes.
Finally on the show, for you anyway, on this show, it is Easter, so we have to talk a little bit about that. It's been getting expensive in Brazil. A very specific product is getting quite expensive.
Very expensive. So Brazilians, maybe we got this from our Portuguese heritage as well. We love to eat bacalhau, salted cod for Easter, especially today, Good Friday. And most Brazilian families would have that, if they can afford, Chris, because the price of the kilo for bacalhau, I think they're doing an average. Of course, you can find cheaper or more expensive, but it's over 200 reais, which would be 30 euros. That's quite a lot. And we import 75% of the salted cod we get is, of course, from Norway. Only 23% comes from Portugal. But to be honest, the one we buy from Portugal actually, it's originally from Norway. They just kind of salted there in Portugal.
Through Portugal.
Exactly.
Portugal does love its bacalhau as well. I did just have it in a visit to Lisbon myself. So they have this tradition and they pass it on to Brazil. Is that how it works?
That's very much how it works. And I think it's delicious. I love bacalhau. So Easter without bacalhau, it is very sad. But nevertheless, I think Easter eggs are also getting expensive in Brazil. But if I may plug something here, Chris,
You can always plug something. I mean, it is Easter and we're talking Easter eggs, and you have something very specific that you have done with Easter eggs for the menu, I know.
I had a tough job. So me and the menu host, Chiara Rimella, we've been tasting some Easter eggs live in studio.
It's a tough job, but somebody's got to do it, Faye.
A lot of trends happening. White chocolate is back. Citrusy Easter eggs are here as well to stay. and much more. You have to tune in, Chris, later tonight.
Have to tune in. Were you excited for this? Is this the first chocolate tasting you've done on the menu? You've done a few tastings with Chiara, haven't you?
I do a lot of tastings with Chiara. So if there is a Christmas coming, Easter, I'm there. I'm tasting panettones, I'm tasting ice creams, I'm tasting all types of food.
All types of food. That's why we love having you, Faye. Music and food. Monocle's senior correspondent, Fernando Augusto Pacheco, thank you very much for joining us. This is The Briefing. And finally on today's show, the Madinat Jumeirah in Dubai is welcoming over 30,000 visitors for the 18th edition of Art Dubai. As large-scale fairs attract international attention, places like the Sima Collective, a grassroots art venue in Dubai, are helping the city find its own local artistic identity. And last week, Monocle's Valentina Venelli visited the Sima Collective for the opening of a new exhibition there, titled It Awakens at Night the Thought. And she found a fledgling art community striving to give Dubai its own unique voice.
Oil built Dubai. Now, its residents are reaching for a different kind of oil, the one that fills a canvas. The city is mainly known for its rapid transformation from a barren desert landscape in the 70s to a bustling metropolis, home to the tallest building and some of the richest people on Earth. Its strategic location, connecting east and west, makes it a hotspot for trade and investment. While petroleum fuels the place, the art market also rides its wealth, especially for Middle Eastern artists who found in Dubai a platform to showcase their work to an affluent global audience. Auction titan Christie's was quick to jump on board, opening its office there in 2005. The 53-year-old UAE may have quickly raised its skyscrapers, but the country's artistic identity is still laying its foundations. With 88% of its population made up of foreigners, many seeking a comfortable life of high salaries and zero income tax, it comes as no surprise that the country is still searching for cultural depth. While the city centre is a playground for consumerism, water fountains dancing to Michael Jackson, robot hands serving iced matcha, and some of the world's most expensive garbs under one roof for a casual shopping trip, a short drive away we found the Sima Collective. It's a warehouse-turned-art venue exposing seedlings of culture growing in the desert. Ahead of this year's Art Dubai, the space is hosting an exhibition titled It Awakens at Night the Thought, featuring 4 emerging artists from Abu Dhabi, Yemen, Jordan, and India. At the exhibition, we caught up with some guests who gave us a glimpse into Dubai's evolving art scene.
It looks like a whole town by itself, you know, and you see all these new galleries with amazing artists from young, emerging to established. It's just the choices are really high. It's not like what it used to be in the past.
That was Shilan Sameh, managing director of the Aisha Alabar Gallery, who, after more than a decade abroad, returned to find an unrecognizable art scene. She's talking about Al Sirkal Avenue, Dubai's district that's rapidly expanded in recent years. It's true, more and more artists see Dubai as a springboard into the global market. For example, Jude Saman from Jordan was exhibiting there for the first time.
The market in Jordan is just like really small, and I do want to just gain more exposure and put myself out there and just exhibit more within the Arab world.
Although she previously studied in Canada, her inspiration remains rooted in Jordan. Dubai's proximity is ideal, allowing her to keep her artistic practice close to home without giving up on market exposure.
My work was maybe misunderstood in the West, and like it wasn't valued as much as it would be here, because it does talk a lot about like cultural heritage and the history of this land.
Many artists share this sentiment. Compared to art hubs like New York, London, or Paris, Dubai offers something of a blank canvas. There's no rigid local scene to break into, and that freedom has given Dubai-based artists an opportunity to find new and radical avenues to explore.
What I experienced here was that, at first there was an art scene in Dubai which was more like an art hub, not an art scene. Now it is changing. Now it's becoming an art community. It's becoming more and more intellectual, more and more radical. It's about radical discourses in art and cultural discourses.
That was Iranian curator, artist and lecturer Behran Samadzadeghan, who shares his excitement about Dubai's residents building a multicultural artistic identity.
I think this is a region that comes from literature, storytelling, history. So many diverse events actually happen. This is a very diverse history.
Behran sees Dubai as the opposite of Michel Foucault's concept of heterotopia, a world within another world that feels other or dissonant. In contrast, Dubai was built from scratch. Its internationalism isn't dissonant. It's a fundamental part of its identity. The UAE government is the first to wish for an artistic identity to take shape. Its spending on arts and culture amounted to $5.3 billion. The new local generation of modern artists is not only supported, but also encouraged to pursue a career in the arts. As the exhibition unfolded, some visitors wandered to the back of the gallery, where a few of the artists had opened their studios. There we got a chance to observe the artworks in progress, getting a rare glimpse into the process of not just selling, but making art in Dubai. One of the collective's current residents, Tatiana Auger, who spent most of her artistic life in London and New York, is keen to stress just how special this new Dubai scene feels.
The SEMA Collective has been an extraordinary gift to be able to come and be able to unpack my work and get back to work. And it is a community like I've never experienced before, because the multinational, multicultural dimension is so rich, and we're all united here. There's something so exciting in the air.
Dubai's artistic identity may still be in its adolescent phase, a bit all over the place, figuring things out, but it's precisely that fledgling nature of its art scene that's acting as a magnet for creatives in the region. There's a growing community of so-called nomadic residents who are on the move to stay.
Valentina Vanelli reporting from Dubai there. And that's all the time we have for this edition of The Briefing. It was produced by Anita Riotta. Our researcher was Gunnar Grunlid, and our studio manager was Steph Changu. The Briefing is back on Monday at the same time. I'm Chris Chermak. Have a good Easter weekend, everyone, and thanks for listening.